It's a tremendous honor to be part of this global learnathon for so many special chesed organizations. Especially want to thank Kol HaTorah Kula for giving me the opportunity to be part of this tremendously beautiful preparation for the great day of Yom Kippur that's coming, the Yom HaKadosh. You know, we all went through so much over the last few months. And definitely in the first weeks of the pandemic and the lockdown and isolation, I think we were all thinking a lot about Mashiach. I have a neighbor who told her children, I want you to pack your bags. I want you to have your suitcases ready on your beds. She told him this before Pesach. For when Mashiach comes, we're so sure Mashiach is coming. Of course, it was very disappointing. And my wife asked me, it was something that I was really thinking about myself. Isn't waiting for Mashiach bring a person to disappointment? We have to wait for him every single day. If you really do that properly, the Chofetz Chaim, Rav Nosson Wachtfogel, people who lived their lives, when they heard a noise outside, they were excited that Mashiach was coming. And every day, he didn't come. Isn't that very disappointing? I have another neighbor who said that during the Seder, in the middle of the Seder, this past year, there was a knock at the door. She was so excited. She was so sure it was Mashiach. I'm not sure why Mashiach was knocking at her door, but she was sure it was Mashiach. What a letdown. It was a neighbor next door who needed a candle. I felt and I thought to myself, and I've been thinking about it tremendously since then, that there's something missing in my appreciation of what Mashiach is about. What are we waiting for? What does it mean? Why doesn't that breed disappointment? And why is it such a fundamental, one of the 13 fundamentals of our faith that the Rambam says one who doesn't believe in it is an apikoris, God forbid? The belief in Mashiach. And I've given it a lot of thought over the last few months. And I have to share with you something very personal. I often complain to my wife that my dreams are ridiculous. When I remember them, they make no sense, no rhyme or reason. They're just silly. And I always complain to my wife that I wish I could change the channel. I could figure something else out. But I had a dream just a few weeks ago. Some background, if you'll understand where the dream came from. A couple of weeks ago on Motzei Shabbos, when I checked the news after Shabbos, I saw that President Trump had made an announcement that he was going to be making a tremendous announcement about a breakthrough with COVID-19 the following day on Sunday afternoon at 6 p.m. That was the announcement that was made. This was also at the same time when the peace treaty between Israel and the United Arab Emirates, the first peace treaty, the first country, I should say, was first happening. Amazing, amazing event. And that night, I had a fascinating dream. True story. President Trump got up at a conference the next day, and he announced a tremendous breakthrough. The Jewish Messiah is coming. I kid you not. In the dream he said, just like you could picture it happening, I've spoken to him. Wonderful man, by the way. He's coming soon. Can't reveal any more details, but it's going to be great. You're going to love him. This was my dream. But here was the kicker. In my dream, I thought to myself, Mashiach is coming. Mashiach's going to be here any day. What should I do now? When he comes, how can I prepare myself? And it struck me. When a person really lives for Mashiach and waits for Mashiach, they have to live accordingly. Rebbe always says over, one of my Rebbeim says over, that we say in benching, we ask Hashem to lead us, with a sense of pride back to our land. We see when Mashiach comes, Be'ezra Hashem, we're all going to go back. All Jews, no matter what level of affiliation. But we hope we go back komimius with pride. Because if God forbid we're sinners, we're all going to go back and we're going to be excited to go back. We're going to go back shamefully, with our heads bowed, because we don't really fit into the world of Mashiach. And so we daven that Hashem help us to go back, komimius, to go back with pride, to be able to fit in. I'm an English principal in the afternoon in a wonderful yeshiva. And one of these texts that were going around, which usually are very silly, that said that Mashiach was coming that afternoon. And all these Mekubalim had said that Mashiach was coming. My students didn't want to go to class. Mashiach is coming. I don't want to be in class, in English class, at the time Mashiach comes. I told them, let me assure you, when Mashiach comes, the best thing you should be doing is whatever you're expected to be doing then. And since the yeshiva has general studies as part of its curriculum, that's what you should be doing. And don't worry, I'll take care of it with Mashiach. That's what you're expected to be doing. But when I said this idea over in my dream, at my Shabbos table at my parents' house recently, my mother told me that there was a neighbor. She has a neighbor. The wife asked the husband, do you want to go to the movies? And he said, how can I go to the movies? What if Mashiach comes in the middle of the movie? A fascinating idea. What a revelation. If we're really waiting for Mashiach, then we live with the real hergish, with the real feeling that Mashiach is coming. We live on a different plane. We live with different goals in mind. And maybe, probably more than maybe, I think that's a big part of it. Maybe not all of it, but I think that's a big part of waiting for Mashiach and living for Mashiach. And a chakelo. If I'm a chakelo, then first of all, I always have hope. And second of all, I'm living for it. I'm living in a different way so that I could fit in, that I could go back home in mius. Yes, it's disappointing when Mashiach doesn't come, but it's not disappointing in the knowledge that I lived properly. I lived for Mashiach. And that's a little bit, we have dual missions in this world. As yechidim, as individuals living for our own perfection and our own elevation, but we also play another role as part of the tzibur, as part of a congregation, as part of Klal Yisrael, waiting and trying to bring Mashiach. Rabbi Dr. Twersky makes the point that it's not enough to believe that I have a purpose. I have to believe that the world has a purpose. That there's a kivun, like kavanah, intention is lashon of kivun, it's direction. That the world has a kivun. That there's a trajectory that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has put the world on. That everything that happens fits into that trajectory. Quote, it's meaningless to talk about the ultimate purpose of man if the entire world is purposeless. And Dr. Twersky relates a cute story about two homeless people wandering around and they get arrested. The judge asks the first one, what were you doing? He said, nothing. He said to the second one, what were you doing? I was helping him. Can't be helping anybody unless there's a purpose in what you're doing. My Rebbe, Rabbi Beryl Wein, relates that the Chofetz Chaim, one morning after Shachris, clapped on the bima in the yeshiva. Chofetz Chaim was not the Rosh Yeshiva there. But he clapped on the bima after Shachris and he said there's a town a few kilometers away from here where the mikveh is broken and they're not fixing it. They don't feel like it's a priority. And I need a bacher from the yeshiva, someone to go and daven there, to spend Yom Kippur there, to be there with them and to speak to them about the importance of the mitzvah and fixing the mikveh. And he sat down. A few minutes later, a bacher in the yeshiva came over to the Chofetz Chaim to ask him a kasha on a tosfos. And they sat and they discussed the tosfos. And afterwards, the Chofetz Chaim said to him, did you hear my announcement? And the bacher replied, Rebbe, I heard the announcement, but should I leave the yeshiva and all the inspiration of the yeshiva for Yom Kippur to go to another town where they don't even want to fix their mikvah? And the Chofetz Chaim turned away and he spat on the floor. And he said, Fooey on your tosfos. Rabbi Wein said he heard this story over from his father-in-law, Rabbi Levine Zecher Tzadik Livracha from Detroit, who lived in the Chofetz Chaim's house. That a person has to live as part of the tzibur as well, with responsibility towards the tzibur. What are we doing for Klal Yisrael to bring Mashiach closer? I told one of my students once, every player at the beginning of a season, they come with dreams of having great stats, good numbers, playing the best that they could. But that's not enough. If you're a real player, it's not just about you and your numbers and your stats. It's also about the team winning a championship. For us as Klal Yisrael, so to speak, our championship is Mashiach coming. This past summer, in Camp to our Goldah, where I am, so we learned the second parak of Megillah, which begins with the words, Hakori Megillah L'Mafreya Lo Yotza. one who reads the Megillas Esther out of order doesn't fulfill his obligation of Megillah. I told my learning group, I said at the time of Purim, at the time the story of the Megillah was happening, the Jews were so lost. They really didn't understand what was going on. Crazy events. Afterwards, we read the Megillah. It's a beautiful story. It's such a beautiful tapestry of events. How HaKadosh Baruch Hu weaved everything together. All these wild, eccentric events to produce the beautiful, perfect miracle of Purim. But at the time that it was happening, it made no sense. But you can't read it out of order because it's a one-time glimpse into the workings of Hashem, how all these crazy events were really perfectly lined up to bring about our Geula. And it's such a chizuk for us because right now we're so lost. We wonder what is going on between the pandemic and the movements, the Black Lives Matter movements and the peace treaties that are going on. And there was an impeachment a few months ago, and the security situation by the Jewish people. It's all so fuzzy, so unclear. But Mashiach will come, and it's all going to be so clear how it all lined up in order to bring Mashiach. There is a trajectory, there is a goal, and our job is to do our best to help bring that about. Rav Noach Weinberg, Zechet Tzadik Livracha, was lying in the hospital bed in his final illness, and one of his Talmidim, forget who it was, came to visit him. And he said, Rebbe, when Mashiach will come, he said, is everybody going to come back to Torah? And Rav Noach weakly said, yes, everyone will come back. He said, so Rebbe, why do we have to kill ourselves? Why do we have to be so busy trying to bring people, to be machazik people, and people laugh at us sometimes and it's uncomfortable? Why do you have to bother? Mashiach will come and it'll all be perfect. And Rav Noach said to him, it's true. You can wait for Mashiach, and it will indeed be perfect. But right now, you have the opportunity to be part of it, to participate in that, to participate in God's work. You can be part of it. And that's our schus now. That's our schus now in Golus. Our tefillah, the way we daven is such a strange thing. Because when we daven with Tzibur, and all of us had a few weeks, months, some people still don't have the opportunity to be davening with Tzibur. And so we really have more of an appreciation of what it means to daven b'tzibur. When we daven b'tzibur, it's a little bit of a funny thing. Because we daven b'tzibur, but individually. Yes, there are many parts of davening that we daven together. But most of davening, most of the words are really said by ourselves. At the end of every paragraph, the chazan says. And we have chazar sashatz that we say. But a lot of davening is said together. It's said alone, together, at the same time. It's a funny thing. But if you think about it, it really symbolizes beautifully the dual roles that we play. We stand before Hashem as yichidim, as individuals, davening for ourselves, but hopefully, ideally, as part of the tzibur as well, with the tzibur. Like in America, where you have 50 different states, but they're all part of one central government. They're all bound together. And on a much higher level, each of us are yechidim, but are bound together as part of Klal Yisrael. And to me, this helps understand something that always intrigued me. And that's the obviously not a coincidental connection between the 3 weeks, which Shivasa B'Tammuz, culminating in Tisha B'Av, and then we have 7 weeks of comfort that lead directly, that finish right before Rosh Hashanah. So it can't be haphazard that there's an obvious connection, an inextricable connection between the weeks of Avelus, the time period of mourning, and the time period of tshuva. And perhaps part of the idea is that the 3 weeks symbolize to us, and more than symbolize, we re-experience every year our national failures. And in a generation where it's not rebuilt, it's like it was destroyed. We haven't merited to bring it back. But on the other, and then Elul and Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, which of course are focused on the tzibur as well. But we know that ultimately our biggest fear is that we stand in din. Kol boyolam over in lefanav kibnei moron, the Mishnah tells us in Rosh Hashanah, that each of us stand in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu as individuals. So before we come into the Yomim Noroyim, where we're beseeching Hashem for ourselves, First, we have to mourn the losses of the tzibur to help remind us that these days of the Yom Noraim, these great days are also days when we have to be focused on the tzibur, on all of Klal Yisrael. In Parshas Kisavo, which we know the halacha is that we read the tochacha, the harsh rebuke. In Parshas Kisavo, we have to read that before the end of the year. Tosas tells us in Megillah, so the year should end with its curses. We get it in before. And Tachel Shanu Birchoseho, that the new year should begin with bracha. So the curses of the Tochacha, the curses of Parshas Kisavo, what's unique about them? What's added by a curse? Anyways, there's Yisurim. We're talking about the Urus, the 11 Urus that are mentioned. Ur, the person curses the person who does this and curses the person who does that. Says the Rashbam and many of the other Rishonim. Those things are all things that are done in private. And the curse is telling you that a person can't say, well, I'm fine, everything is good, so other people are doing things in private, it's their problem. We have to be worried about what's going on among other Jews in the privacy of their own homes. Of course, what we don't know, we can't help. But there are difficulties and challenges that people face globally in the privacy of their own homes. But we know they're global problems. God forbid, there's so many shalom bayis problems. So many people struggling with inappropriate materials on the internet and otherwise. So many people struggling with chinuch, to mechanech their children. And so we have a responsibility to help them as a generation, as Klal Yisrael. And Baruch Hashem, there are so many amazing, incredible organizations that are dedicated to these types of issues in Klal Yisrael. But that which happens b'seiser, because there's a bond of arvus, a connection of Klal Yisrael, so therefore we have to worry about them. On Rosh Hashanah, we davened Malchios, Zichronos, and Shofros. Malchios is, the first thing is, V'yashem lemelech al kol haaretz. It's about the entire world. That's followed by Zichronos. Zichronos, the Sefer Ikarim says, is about Hashgacha Pratis. It's about my personal relationship with Hashem. How Hashem watches everything I do. And there again, that balance between Klal Uprat, between the Tzibur and the Yochid. The last week of the Shiva Dinechemta, the 7 beautiful Haftorahs from the Novi Yeshaya. The last week, Parshas Nitzavim, the Haftorah for Parshas Nitzavim. Where Yeshaya Novi says, Al Chomosayich Yerushalayim, words that have been made into a song many times over, beautiful words, upon your walls, Yerushalayim, Ifkadeti Shomrim Kol Hayom V'Chol Halayla. I have appointed guards, watchmen, all day and all night. Tomid Maskirim, they're always mentioning. Al Domi Lechem, they'll never be quiet. Rav Shimon Schwab says that a shomer, it's not only a guard. The Pasuk says, when Yaakov Avinu, after Yosef HaTzadik told the dreams over to the brothers, and the brothers hated him for them. So it says, Yaakov Avinu yelled at him, but V'aviv Shomar Asadavar. He guarded the matter, says Rashi. Guarded means Yoshev U'Mitzapeh. He sat and he waited, and he hoped, and he anticipated. When is it going to happen? He waited for it to come. Hashomer Shabbos Abeinim Abbas. Not only one who guards Shabbos, but one who anticipates Shabbos. He's excited for Shabbos. Habeinim Abbas, his children. He takes his children together and he waits for Shabbos. It's so pleasing to Hashem, like a korban mincha that a person brings with their very soul. And here too, Hifkadeti Shomrim. The Navi says, I have appointed those who wait. There have never ceased to be those who are waiting for the Geula. And that's why after 1900 years we came back. Because we never stopped hoping and waiting. Something that has never happened in history. And we yet await, and we're still Shomer for the final Geula. We never stopped waiting. We never stopped keeping the Torah. Because we're waiting to go back. That preserved us. Because we know we had a glorious past and a glorious future. So even if the present is not so pretty, and it's very difficult, but we never stopped waiting. We're going to go back. We have to keep the Torah properly because we're going to go back. We need to fit in. We need to be part of it. We want to be part of the world of Mashiach. And I think that's a very important component. As we daven and we anticipate the tefillos of Yom Kippur and the vidui of Yom Kippur, not just for ourselves, but for Klal Yisrael. Rabbi Soloveitchik points out, in the vidui that we say in Shemona Esrei on Yom Kippur, in the Chazoras Hashatz, we almost sing it. It's the strangest thing in the world. Oshanu Boganu. Ay, 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 ay. What are we doing? You're singing about how you were guilty, how you betrayed, how you stole. What kind of song is that? So Zev Lev says, people sing in the shower all the time. If we're saying Vidu on Yom Kippur, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is swiping out our Averis because we do sincere tshuva. That's surely something to think about. Rabbi Soloveitchik pointed out that there's actually two parts of tshuva on Yom Kippur. The first two parts of Vidui. There's the Vidui that we say quietly for ourselves. And during when we say that, we're not singing at all. Because we stand alone when we say Vidui for ourselves. But the other Vidui is the Vidui we say as part of the Tzibur. When we say Vidui as part of the Tzibur, as part of Klal Yisrael, we're very confident. Because there are promises. Mochisi ka'ov b'shecha. God says, I will wipe away. Klal Yisrael. Klal Yisrael will survive. Klal Yisrael will endure. As Moshe Rabbeinu told Klal Yisrael, Rashi quotes at the beginning of Nitzavim, when their faces turn green, they turn pale from all the curses. Moshe Rabbeinu said, Harbe achastem l'fnei hamakom. You have gotten Hashem so angry over the generations, but you're still here. Atem Nitzavim hayom, you're still standing. But that's true for the tzibur of Klal Yisrael. Netzach Yisrael lo yishaker. The eternity of Klal Yisrael will never falter. But us as individuals, we want to be part of it. We hope to be part of it. So as we daven on this Yom Kippur, for the kates, sophicates, lepidyon afshenu, sophicates the end of the tsaris, particularly of the last year. But all the tsaris, there's so much pain that's out there. So much feeling of disconnect. That we daven that HaKadosh Baruch Hu help us to reconnect, not only as Yechidim, but all of Klal Yisrael. That we worry about Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael, Hanasunu Batzora Vashivya, all Jews who are distant, to be brought back. That we know that we're bringing ourselves as we excitedly await to enter the Sukkah, but not just ourselves, all of Klal Yisrael. That all of Klal Yisrael should come underneath Sukkah's Or Shel Yasam, be zochet together Be'ez Hashem to a Gemar Chaslima Tova. And beyond that, v'yolichenu komim mius la'artzenu. We'll all go back. It won't be President Trump who's announcing Mashiach, but Hine Nochi Sholech Lechem es Eliyahu Hanavi Lifnei Yom Hashem HaGadol v'Hanora. The great day that's coming, the great events that we Be'ez Hashem are all going to witness. Be zochet to a Gemar Chaslima Tova. Lanu u'lechol Yisrael. Have a beautiful and uplifting Yom Kippur. And Kol Tov.